It is your Friday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for the final show of the week, and actually what turns out to be the final regular show, at least, of 2023. There'll be one big show next week, but it's a best of 2023, the top 10 sports moments in Minnesota in 2023. We've recorded that already with Jeff Day. That'll go live, I think, Wednesday next week. Give that a chance to kind of get a little bit closer to the start of 24. But then I'm off next week and then back on the second Tuesday with Royce talking all sorts of stuff. Can't wait to see what's happened in the next 10 days in between now and then. Vikings will have played twice. We'll be into 2024. All sorts of stuff going on. So this is the last real show, last official, kind of daily show of 2023, and a good one at that. We're going to talk ice fishing in a little while. Don't do that very often, but Tony Kennedy, outdoors writer for the Star Tribune, will join me here in a little bit. Thought that was a good subject to tackle right now with our brown winter, kind of a subject that probably will be relevant for a while here too. So Tony will join me to kind of talk about the impact of the warm December so far on the industry of ice fishing, the people who want to get out there on our lakes, things like that. So stick around for that here in just a little bit. Get to a couple listener questions towards the end of the show that kind of point us towards 2024 and some of the kind of big questions coming up next year. First, though, what did I miss? There's a lot of good games last night. We should talk about them. Kind of a blueprint kind of night. The Wild, the Wolves, and the Gophers men's basketball team all won on Thursday night. All of them kind of doing it in a fashion that you could see being the way forward. Now, the Wolves didn't need to rebrand themselves much from the rest of the start of this season. They've been going great. We'll get to them in a minute. They beat the Lakers, albeit the Lakers without LeBron. The Gopher men's basketball team got balanced scoring. We'll get into that in a little bit. The Wild is the one that was most interesting to me because they won 4-3, another overtime win, another game where they gave up a late lead, but still rallied to win in overtime. Kirill Kaprizov with the overtime winner for a second consecutive game. Now, the blueprint here that I see is the four guys who dominated this game for the Wild: Matt Boldy, Kirill Kaprizov, Marco Rossi, and Brock Faber. Those were your four goal scorers in this game. Those were your four kind of key players in this game. Kirill Kaprizov skated 29 minutes and 9 seconds in this game. Now, some of that is it's an overtime game. Some of that is that he skated more than 6 minutes on the power play, had a little bit of shorthanded time too. So even strength was about 22 minutes of skating. But still, his even strength and his total time on ice, 6 minutes more than any other forward for the Wild. 6 minutes more than any other forward. Brock Faber was the same on defense. 33 minutes and 25 seconds of ice time. Now, again, it was an overtime game that went very deep into overtime before Kaprizov scored. And Faber had 11 and a half minutes of special teams time. 6 minutes on the power play, a little over 5 minutes of shorthanded play. So a lot of that time was not the up and down of 5-on-5 play, but still 33 minutes for Faber, 29 minutes for Kaprizov. Faber played almost 7 minutes more than any other defenseman. Jake Middleton had almost 27 minutes. He played almost 14 minutes more than the next highest defenseman, Zach Bogosian. So you look at it and you say, okay, well, that's not necessarily sustainable. Part of that, of course, is injuries to the Wild. No Matt Zuccarello, no Ryan Hartman for the Wild in their forward lineup, so Kaprizov takes extra shifts there. He had 28 shifts. That's a lot of shifts for Kirill Kaprizov. Faber plays 29 shifts. That's a bunch for him too. Without Jonas Brodin and without Jared Spurgeon, the Wild still find a way to win. And the prototype isn't play these guys into the ground. The prototype is expect a lot out of these guys because they are capable of it. They are all young. They are the future. Kaprizov had a goal and 2 assists. He was a +3. He was all over the ice, just all over the place. Playing a ton. He had just a monster game when they needed it most. Faber, of course, like I said, had a monster game, a goal and an assist in those 33 minutes. He was a +1 on the game. Boldy had a goal. Again, he's been going good lately, just watching him skate up and down the ice. And again, Rossi, a goal, 2 assists, a fight. Did not expect to see Marco Rossi in a fight in this game, but he stuck up for Kaprizov during a scuffle in, I believe it was the second period. But these 4 guys are the core, right? These are especially the young 3. Like Kaprizov's been around for a little while now. He's not super young anymore, but Boldy, Rossi, and Faber. These 3 guys, they're a continued ascent into not just like dependable players, but upper echelon players, guys who you can count on night in and night out to bring the offense, bring the defense. That is going to be a big part of the Wild's future going forward. So seeing that all come together in this game against Montreal in a 4-3 win, that's what made it a prototype win for me to watch in this game. Now, the Wolves kind of had the same thing going in my estimation. If you could kind of script like an average night or what you want it to look like for the Wolves, especially from their starting 5, it was kind of this 118-111 win over the Lakers. You have Anthony Edwards taking the most shots, being relatively efficient, 9 of 19 from the field, so he was almost 50%, 7 of 8 from the line, 27 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, and a block. Like, that's just Ant all over the box score. Towns takes the second most shots. 7 of 17, not great, but you're going to have a shooting night like that sometimes. Not bad. 21 points. He's a plus 12. He had 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Rudy Gobert getting the next highest usage, essentially. 6 for 11, 15 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks. Again, that's kind of a typical Rudy Gobert game. Mike Conley Jr. and Jaden McDaniels having more efficient, lower usage nights. Conley 6 of 9 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3. 16 points, 8 assists. Jaden McDaniels, 14 points, 3 assists, just 5 of 8 from the field, but making big shots. Like, that is what you want from the starting lineup. All 5 of them had at least 14 points. Ant leading the way with 27. Towns being a key contributor with 21. Getting enough from the bench. Kyle Anderson had some good minutes. Naz Reid had some good minutes. Didn't play a ton of Troy Brown, but really didn't have to play guys an absurd number of minutes. Ant played 38, Gobert 37. You might like to see that a little bit lower, but by and large, didn't have to play guys an absurd number of minutes, not dipping too deep into the depth, although Troy Brown Jr. only played 6 minutes in this game, so that was kind of interesting. But kind of it's been kind of an 8-guy rotation lately for the Wolves, but leaning on the players that are going to get you there, leaning on those guys and having them deliver. That was what the Wolves did in this game. That was what the Wild did in their game as well. In the Gophers, it was much the same. They leaned on their best players as well. Got all 5 starters in double figures in an 80-63 win over Ball State. I mean, yeah, it's just Ball State. Ball State came in 8-3. They are a team that had been winning at least. Gophers now 9-3 on the season. Cam Christie had 11 points. Mike Mitchell Jr., big game, 20 points on 4 of 5 shooting from three-pointer. Elijah Hawkins, 12 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. He's really starting to find his way. All 3 of those guys played 37 minutes in this game. Gophers also got double figures from Farrell Payne and Josh Ola Joseph. So all 5 of their starters, just like the Wolves, in double figures. This is the prototype. These are 3 prototype games. This is what they're going to need to win at the next level in all these cases. We're going to need to win for the rest of the season to sustain this. Now, again, like I said, you don't want these guys playing massive minutes all season, but you do want to know that your best players are going to be able to deliver when you need them the most. And I feel like all 3 of these teams got that in wins on Thursday night.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
It is good to have Star Tribune outdoors writer Tony Kennedy on with me today. Tony does a great job along with colleague Bob Timmons, Dennis Anderson, the whole outdoors team. People love the outdoors, of course, Tony, in this state, and it's a big part of what we do at the Star Tribune. You had an interesting story Thursday about ice fishing or really the lack thereof, right, Tony? Because it's as you might have noticed around the state, it's not been as cold this winter as we're accustomed to.
Yeah, totally. It's everything is it's not a wipeout. I mean, people are still fishing, but it has really altered the early season and not in a good way.
No, exactly. We'll get into some of the reasons why. Maybe we can just kind of start with just, there's a lot of ice fishing has kind of maybe a unique appeal, but certainly a relatively broad appeal. Obviously, you've kind of got to want it, especially because it's got to get cold enough to be out on the ice, and then you're going to be out there for quite a while. Why do you think so many Minnesotans in the first place cherish this pastime of ice fishing?
It's when you have the gear and you can make yourself comfortable out on the ice, which you can now in spades. It is such a great thing to do. It's such a great thing to do in the winter to make an exciting day, to have fun. And the more you do it, the more you like it. And the more gear you collect, it is kind of gear intensive. But once you get it, once you get all your stuff going, it can be a great time, and it's a good family pastime too.
This time of year, from your story, I glean that this is generally when you have the kind of the early part of the season is generally the best for ice fishing. Why is that? And is that part of why this is people are getting so antsy, not just to start, but because this is generally the best of what you get from the season?
Yeah, your hardcore ice anglers want to get out as soon as there's 4 inches of ice on any lake because the bite is always strongest then. I mean, part of that, and I'm not, a scientist will check me on this, but what you hear in the chatter is there's more oxygen in the lake
Okay.
as the winter builds and the ice thickness builds. There's less light down below. There's less oxygen, and there also can become more traffic. When there's traffic on top of the ice, that scares fish away. So, when you got 15 to 20 inches of ice and people are driving trucks out and
Sure.
ice castles, then it changes things on the bottom. But yeah, and then also that oxygen thing is the fish, especially walleyes, get less active. And as the winter goes on, while the walleye bite fades, for sure. Panfish is a little different thing. You can catch panfish generally all winter.
Where then right now is there enough ice? And it just kind of seems like it's kind of sporadic, kind of depends on where you are in the state. Different parts of the state have been a little bit warmer than usual. Some of them are still getting some ice, and some of it just kind of depends on you're able to fish in some spots, but not able to, kind of bring all of the heavy equipment out because the ice isn't thick enough to support, vehicles, but still maybe thick enough in some spots to support foot traffic out onto the ice.
Exactly. And that's what's going on right now is basically, I mean, if you look at the sites, I haven't been out yet because of the warmth, but from St. Cloud north to Grand Rapids, say, you can find ice that you can walk out on. You're not strong enough to use your 4x4 or your snowmobile yet to bring out more equipment. But and then from Grand Rapids to the Canadian border, it gets a little better, but still it's lake by lake, and you can't trust the ice right now. You really gotta talk to your bait guy, talk to resort owners where you're going out to make sure, because they generally mark the ice. They know what the thickness is. And you got to, this year especially, follow those guidelines. But even in places, in the far north, you can't take there's not 9 inches of ice that you could drive a four-wheeler or a snowmobile on yet. Other places there are. So it's really hit and miss.
And that's unusual. I mean, I think the beginning of your story talked about, someone who was doing this for like 30 years, and this is a very unusual start to the winter based on that kind of history, right?
Right on, right on. That was Kevin McCoy at Max Twin Bay Resort on Mille Lacs, And he said in 29 years of running his business, only one time did he not have all his sleeper houses out on the ice with people paying to rent them and fish between Christmas and New Year's. Because of that early bite we talked about,
Yep.
that's a really popular time. And so people can still catch walleyes then and enjoy the week off, you know. So yeah, right on.
How are the ice fisher? How are the fisher people dealing with all this? I mean, I imagine they're kind of getting antsy to get out, but you can't, like you said, I mean, you got to take safety into the primary account here. You can't be, going out and doing risky things. So how are people adapting so far this year?
Yeah, it's staying on finding good ponds, finding small, shallow lakes, finding bays. There are, I mean, the ice fishing has been good on the southern bays of Mille Lacs, for instance, but other parts of Mille Lacs, there's wide open water. Um, None of those big lakes have locked in, they say, where there's ice all over and then wind is a lot less likely to shift things. So, but if you look, there are places to fish. It's just that there's not that abundance and people are getting cranky. I talked to Andy Peterson from Ice Fishing Minnesota. It's a really popular website on Facebook, and you can, when you read the comments on there, you can tell people are getting itchy and they want to get out. He's a little worried that that'll lead to more accidents like we had on Red Lake on Sunday night. We had an ice sheet break away and drift out 200 feet into the water, and 35 people had to be rescued.
Yeah,
So
tell me more about that because that was kind of dramatic, and that's that underscores some of what can happen here. And then I think you wrote about it, an airplane that tried to land, a small Cessna that tried to land on the ice and went through. Hopefully we don't see anything more like that, but that doesn't underscore just like, hey, this is nature. You can't you can be antsy all you want, but you can't fight against what's happening outside.
yeah, the Red Lake phenomena is interesting. That is the mecca for early ice. Okay, everybody in the state who's serious about catching walleyes through the ice wants to be at Red Lake, and usually it's open. The resorts have marked the ice on Thanksgiving, and
Wow.
people just go nuts. I mean, there's thousands of people still fishing up there every day right now because the walleye bite is still good. Um, so it's not unusual. It seems to happen every year that people get trapped on an ice floe and they have to be rescued. This year's, I would say, was pretty dramatic. Usually they don't float that far. There was a lot of open water, and it was a super windy day, and they were relying on the sheriff's department and the first responders there in Washkish to save them. I mean, they were 200 feet out on open water, and guys were still fishing. They were kind of pissed that the DNR was out there to save them. So it's crazy. I mean, those guys have such a fever. And the thing is, Mike, that here we are, we're at Christmas almost. By second week of January, people stop fishing Red Lake largely. Not, the lake is draws fishermen all winter, but that bite goes away, and
Okay.
and yeah, the frenzy stops.
Where will this kind of shift then? I mean, when can we expect, if everybody's kind of telling you that the season is kind of 3 weeks behind in a lot of places, like when do you think there will be kind of this kind of normalcy or what you would think of as normalcy where you can, get out on a lot of these lakes with the heavier equipment and conversely, like, if it's 3 weeks behind, there's no guarantee how long the season will last to. It could be an extremely short season if it's a warm spring too.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. It could be really unusual. So everybody's hoping for a cold snap in January. And here's what's interesting, and I didn't know this until I talked to Kevin up on Mille Lacs. He said that what we really need, you need those sub-zero nights. You need those long cold snaps to drive the ice past 8 inches. I mean, if it stays in the 20s or even teens, he says that's not, the ice will just stay at 8 inches. You need
Okay.
that super cold, frigid air to drive the ice down to 15, and 15 to 20 is when you can start taking your truck and your ice house out there, and that's what a lot of people want to do. So we might not ever get there, below. I think we'll probably get there up in on Lake of the Woods at some point because the days are so short up there and it is cold. But I don't know.
Yeah, we just don't know. That's kind of an interesting. It's an interesting thing. It's a bummer for a lot of people who love to fish, and I'm sure the resort owners are like, "Hey, come on, like, can we get a little break here?"
Yes, it is. The industry is enormous. I was at the ice fishing show in St. Paul, about 3 weeks ago, and it is compelling how many people are in the business in Minnesota of selling ice fishing tackle, ice houses, pop-ups, tip-ups, everything. It's unbelievable. I think there was 200 vendors, and huge crowd, so yeah, it could hurt. It could hurt the industry. There could be some stuff on sale, Michael.
Yeah, I would suppose if it's supply and demand. Well, go read Tony's story for more on this. Tony, before I say goodbye, let's talk about anything coming up. Like, what are you guys working on in outdoors for either the end of this year or early 24? What are some of the big issues coming up?
Well, we'll have early in January. We'll have a roundup of important wildlife habitat projects that not only the DNR but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Forest Service are working on to improve wildlife habitat across the state. And then there's an interesting story brewing regarding the walleye bag limit statewide, which is 6 for now, and it's religious. People in Minnesota are crazy about walleyes. It's a favorite fish here, and 6 walleyes per day as your bag limit is kind of essential. But the DNR is moving to change that to 4 through a rulemaking process, and we're going to probably see some fireworks sometime early in the year.
I would imagine you don't mess with people in the walleye, do you? That should be, even if it sounds like, well, what's the difference between 4 and 6? I imagine that's a pretty big difference to a lot of people.
Yes, it is. It's history, and some people, they take a summer vacation. It's the only time they can fish for walleyes. And so they're gone for a week and they want that limit at 6, even if they don't, the science shows that, not a lot of people catch 6 in a day. They don't reach the bag limit. That's why, it has remained that way. But, yeah, you start fooling with that and it hits home to a lot of people.
So is it more the case of people want to catch 6 fish, or is it more the case that people don't want to be told what to do?
Yeah, good point. I mean, it's probably both of that.
Okay.
They definitely don't want the regs, a new reg that kind of restricts them.
Sure.
So yeah.
Interesting. Well, we'll be looking for that. That'll definitely be a big story in early 24. And maybe by the time you write about that, there will be enough ice for everybody to fish on. Tony, Kennedy, appreciate it. As always, you guys do a great job. We do a great job with our outdoors coverage of the Star Tribune, and we'll catch up soon down the road. Happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Same to you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Have to admit, I'm not the world's foremost ice fisherman. I tried it once, like a long time ago. Not that I didn't like it, but I just haven't gone back to it. But I know a lot of people do enjoy it. Learned a lot about it from Tony just now, and learned a lot about kind of what's going on this season, the continued impact of our warmer winter right now. I mean, we're feeling it just in a different way with our kids. Like, they're like, when is it going to snow? We want to go sledding. Like, we've just gotten nothing so far. And looking at the forecast for the next few days, might get a little precipitation, but it looks like it's going to be rain. So here we are. It might not be into January until we start to do some of these winter activities. Now, it's good and bad in terms of just the short term, at least. Being able to walk outside and not freeze is a nice feeling, but we are definitely not doing a lot of the things in the winter time that we would normally be doing. And yes, now it is officially winter after yesterday's solstice. Let us finish with the cooler. Kind of an extended one today. I asked on social media the other day for some of your big questions going into 2024, and I felt like these two kind of distilled things into 2 things that I'm going to be watching big time in the coming year. One, Noel says, any news on broadcast rights? No, it's not news per se, because nothing really has happened yet. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen with the Twins. We're still kind of waiting to see what happens with Diamond Sports and their bankruptcy, but I feel like we're getting closer to decisions. There's a couple things. Earlier this week, we saw the report from the Wall Street Journal that Diamond Sports is negotiating with Amazon Prime Video to maybe partner with them on some sort of multi-year streaming partnership platform where Bally Sport, what's now on Bally Sports, what's now all the teams controlled by Diamond Sports, which locally, of course, includes the Twins, the Wild, the Wolves, at least in 23. Now the Twins' contract expired. We'll get to that in a minute. But teams that have typically been on Bally Sports North, could they at some point, through Diamond Sports, through the parent company, could they wind up on Amazon Prime Video for the streaming portion of things at least? That would be an interesting development. Some deep pockets there, obviously, maybe a possibility. But right now, there's also this kind of sense of, hey, teams are going to get paid in 2024, at least in all of these leagues, the NHL, the NBA, with slightly reduced rights fees. And they're saying that they're going to pay the baseball teams as well. After this season, though, it is going to be wide open, and that's what I want to talk about for 2024. We don't really know exactly where this is headed yet, but it feels like 2024 is finally going to be the year where we get some sort of clarity on this. Are the leagues going to take these things over en masse? Is there going to be a different kind of solution? Is Diamond Sports going to cease to exist? Or are they going to come out of this reorganized with some sort of partnership, maybe with Amazon, things like that? We're getting closer to finding that out. We got to find this out about the Twins soon because they don't have a deal right now. They're not one of these teams that's like, hey, is Bally going to pay us? They don't have a deal right now. Their contract expired at the end of the season. They're trying to figure out, hey, are we going to do maybe another year of Bally Sports with, under Diamond Sports? Are we going to go with MLB? Is there some other solution here? I think we're going to find that out very soon, but we don't know that yet. But that is one of the big looming questions in 2024. What will this all look like, when all these hockey and NBA contracts, these all end essentially in April when the regular season ends. The baseball contracts probably will all be done essentially by the end of September, unless there's some sort of extension. Like these are kind of the extent of the known payments that we can say we know about. So 24 in all of these big sports that are kind of run by Diamond Sports, all of them, we will know a lot more in the coming year, and how that plays out. I'm sure I'll be talking about it a lot more, but how it plays out will impact how you guys watch games and how I watch games as well. The other question comes from T. Gage. He wants to know, when was the last season that the Wolves, Twins, and Vikings all made the playoffs in the same calendar year? Can it happen in 2024? Now, it kind of depends on how you define the calendar year, but I think if we're looking at it from a practical standpoint, we're looking at kind of the year that they played. I think for the NBA and NHL, I think of the year as the year where the playoffs started. So 23 would be the 22-23 season for the Wolves and Wild. So if we're talking about that right now, there's a chance it happens right now, because I think the NFL season we talk about has to be the year where they played most of the regular season games. So 23, you already had the Wolves make the playoffs. You already had the Twins make the playoffs in 23. You could have the Vikings make the playoffs this year. We just don't know if they're going to make it yet. 22, we wouldn't count that. Obviously, the Twins didn't make it. The Vikings did. The Wolves did, but not the Twins. Going back beyond that, I believe because the Wolves had such a drought, the only time they'd made it before a couple of years ago was the 2017-18 season. Vikings didn't make the playoffs in 2018. The Twins didn't make the playoffs in 2018. You've got to go back all the way, I believe, to 2004 when the Twins made the playoffs, when the Wolves went to the Western Conference Finals, and the Vikings sneaked into the playoffs that year, beat the Packers in the playoffs. Those playoffs, of course, happening just right into 2005, but the season was 2004. So 20 years ago. It could still happen this year, but I think the question gets to the heart. What gets to the heart of this question is, how good are these teams going to be in 2024? Let's put the Wild in the same category. Let's put the Lynx in this category. Who's going to be good in 2024? Who can get to the playoffs? Who can make a playoff run? I think we're certainly talking about the Wolves. They're at the top of the list right now, and I've been accused, mockingly or truthfully over the years of getting too optimistic about the Wolves at certain times. But I think you have to look at them right now and say this is the best team in this market right now. I know the Twins just won a playoff series finally, but they don't. The Wolves have a certain level of dominance that they're showing right now. Again, only a third of the way into the regular season, but they're showing a certain level right now that makes you think they can go on a deep playoff run, that they will finish the regular season with a very good record, that they will have a high winning percentage. I think certainly making the playoffs is not even an expectation right now. That's almost a certainty given where they are right now. What can they do once they get there is probably the bigger question. So I'd say they're almost a playoff lock for 24. Obviously, you've got to stay healthy, things like that. The Wild are interesting. They weren't part of the original question, but the Wild are interesting. They've been rallying. They've been playing better lately under new coach John Hines. They've got to keep that going. But I think they have a chance to make the playoffs because the West is not that great. The Vikings in 24 will be fascinating because you're talking about a quarterback question. Will they bring Kirk Cousins back? A Justin Jefferson contract extension's got to get done. They got other people who are extension eligible. It's kind of really the crossroads year. Like, do you kind of keep kind of transitioning, keep going on this competitive rebuild? Do you kind of throw all the chips in and say, you know what, I think we like our roster enough right now. The defense has been remade under Brian Flores. Some of these guys starting to emerge. We think we can win right now. Let's sign Kirk Cousins to another 2 years, not start over at quarterback yet. Or do they feel like, hey, in order to fit all these things in order to keep building the roster we want to build, we got to start over at quarterback at some point and get younger and cheaper at that position? That's going to be a fascinating offseason question. I think if they brought Kirk Cousins back in 24 and he was healthy, I think they would be in good shape to make the playoffs. I don't know what their ceiling is still, though, with Kirk Cousins as the quarterback. So that's the question they have to ask themselves in 2024. But certainly a chance the Vikings could make the playoffs in 2024. Same with the Twins. I'm worried about their pitching. I'm worried about the payroll going down. They've already lost Sonny Gray, Kenta Maeda, and obviously and Emilio Pagan too. Like, a lot of their starting rotation, a lot of what they depended upon last year in their rotation is just not going to be there right now. So what does that mean for next year? You got Pablo Lopez still at the top of the rotation, but you're going to have to do some more work this offseason. They're going to be not as deep next year, I don't think. So how does that play out in the American League Central? They're projected to win, I think, like 85 games right now, which again would be probably fine in the division. But where does that get you long term? Where does that put you in the big picture of baseball when you're trying to compete against the Dodgers eventually, who've signed everybody this offseason to spending billions of dollars on players? How does that stack up against a team like that when you are still a team kind of in the middle market trying to get by with some of these fringe moves as opposed to these big splashy moves? But I could see, getting back to the original question, I could see all three of those teams being playoff teams in 2024. I could see it happening this year if the Vikings make it. They're a coin flip. The other two have already made it, so it could happen this year. But yeah, beyond that, it has been since 2004. I could certainly see the Lynx making it next year. I could see the Loons making it next year as well. We were really close this year to having all the teams make the playoffs. We actually, for calendar year, we were very close to having it happen. It could happen in 2024. We'll have to see, but that is what we were looking forward to next year. Just how good are these teams? Who is the most dominant? I would say, if it's weird to think, but I would say if you're going to put your energy into any one pro team right now, it's got to be the Timberwolves, and maybe after that it's the Twins, because they just showed that they at least can get past that initial round of the playoffs and get to the next level. But that's what we're watching for in 2024. Again, like I said, no daily shows next week. We'll have a best of top 10 moments with Jeff Day and me going kind of back and forth. It's a long one, so stick around for that next week. Have a great holiday. Have a great new year. I'll be back at it Tuesday, January 2nd with Royce. Can't wait to see what happens between now and then. Stay safe. Take care. And we'll talk to you then.